Howdy folks, Jamboree here, and in this video I'm going to be responding to a Patron request. That patron being Jacob Below. They've asked me to review the movie A Night to Remember. Based on the book by Walter Lord, this film examines the night that the Titanic ship sank after hitting an iceberg and how a lack of lifeboats caused the deaths of many passengers. It centers mainly on Second Officer Lightoller, who experienced many aspects of the event firsthand. This film isn't about entertaining audiences by exaggerating historic details or coming up with its own story, but rather reenacting the very reality of what happened during this disaster. Sure, some errors were later corrected after the film was released, but the movie did its best to stay faithful to information available at the time. There's a documentary feel to the whole movie that's incredibly immersive. It feels like we're in this ship ourselves because everything is so authentically portrayed. There are certain things about this movie that give it this hauntingly eerie atmosphere, like the stark black and white film, which adds a melancholic tint to the ship's interior, as classy as some floors are. The movie already has a very formal and straightforward tone, but the lack of colour makes everything even colder. However, the most striking thing about this film is that music is very rarely accompanied in the soundtrack, which means that we end up paying more attention to the creaks and groans of the ship, the empty silence of the night, or most disturbingly, the loud screams of passengers fearing for their lives. When music does play, it alarms us immediately, because it comes out of nowhere and has an intense impact by shattering the silence. Any sequence that's given a sudden dramatic score becomes even more horrifying to watch, because the moment is deemed shocking enough to warrant emotionally heightened music. While the movie does have a large ensemble cast, it does its best to convey various facts by giving us subplots involving different kinds of passengers. Like how the disadvantaged passengers on the bottom floor try to flee to safety.
But the word's going round that the women and children are taking to the boats.
You can't go through here. This is not the way to the steerage boat deck, I've told you.
Which is the way then?
They'll be opening the lower deck ports when the orders are given.
Oh, they will they?
The separation of families and couples by the women and children first order.
It's only a matter of form for you and the children to go first. Everyone here will be quite safe.
Is that the truth?
Certainly it is.
Or the wealthy elite's desire to pride their luxuries over their own lives.
Mr. Guggenheim, your lifebelt. It was uncomfortable. We have dressed now in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen.
Each of these plots help us to better understand the scope of the tragedy and how each passenger reacted to the news of the Titanic hitting an iceberg, showing that these were real people with their own individual personalities and cultures. There's some commentary on the British class system referenced throughout too, not through preachy monologues or confrontational conflict, but by simply showing how privileged the upper class were and their attitude to the poor passengers.
Oh, well played, sir. I say, let's go down and join the fun.
But they're steerage passengers.
We also get to witness the ship sinking through the eyes of those who commandeered or designed the Titanic, how they tried their best to solve the situation in spite of the lack of hope.
Well, Phillips? Carpathia, sir. She's making 17 knots and should be with us about 3:30. That'll be too late. There may be someone nearer. Keep trying. Yes, sir.
And eventually let their guilt consume them once it was time to give up. The film can be very hard to sit through, especially when the sinking of the ship escalates, but to say it's devoid of any kind of humanity or emotion would be unfair.
Please, Rachel, get in the boat. Yes, Mrs. Krauss, you must.
I've always stayed with my husband, Colonel, so why should I leave him now?
Please, be sensible.
We have been living together for many years, Isidore. Where you go, I go.
It's not a cruel film, and it doesn't want to revel in the bleakness of what happened. For example, there's an American passenger called Margaret Brown, who is without a doubt the best character in the film, wonderfully played by Tucker Maguire. Even though she's obviously very privileged, she shows so much compassion once everyone has to escape, willing to play a part in saving people regardless of their class, even when she's told that it's a pointless endeavor.
What the hell are we waiting for? Those people are drowning. This boat isn't full. We can go and pick some of them up.
Are you mad? If we get among that lot, they'll swamp the boat. They'll capsize us.
We can't just sit here and do nothing. Come on, girls. Row!
The real Margaret Brown was a woman who strongly believed in human rights and gained the nickname the unsinkable Molly Brown. Not to mention, the film ends by detailing the important changes to safety policies that came about after the disaster. So even though this horrible tragedy did happen, humankind tried their best to learn from it and not let it happen again. If you're after a very authentic and grounded take on the Titanic tragedy, then this movie is for you. I've been Jamboree, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, then feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Cheerio, folks.